Welcome to the 20 Ingredients of an Outstanding Downtown Part 3. This is the merchants list. And this section is so important because now we're talking about bringing customers into your doors as merchants. So let's jump right into it. Ingredient number 15, 2020 signage equals money, money, money. This is the rule of blade signs, perpendicular signs. When we come into any town, driving down the street, we're looking out our windshield like this, we see signs that are perpendicular to us. It's the same thing as when we're walking down the sidewalk. We see those signs that are perpendicular to us. You can see them right here. This is in Leavenworth, Washington, the blade signs there. And by the way, I want you to know something about these blade signs. Notice the one in the very right, top right corner says restaurant. The next one says train store. The next one says collectibles. The next one says chocolate. Always make sure that what's on your sign is a primary lure to pull us in. That's more important than the name of your business. So, every downtown should allow and promote and encourage businesses to put out blade signs. Make them consistent height and size so that you don't create sign clutter. Every successful downtown that we surveyed used blade signs. This is in Nantucket in Massachusetts. Notice not every sign has to be cookie cutter to each other, the same size, but just similar in size and height and width. So here again, once again, this is in Nantucket, the same set of signs looking at a different angle. This is in Carmel, California. Notice the signs here. And this one here is in Banff, Alberta. This is the rule of blade signs. And even for bigger downtowns, it might be like this one in Valparaiso, Indiana. The little larger scale buildings, and so the signs are a little larger. But once again, this is what we see. Even malls now are putting in blade signs for people walking down the corridors. This is in the town of Canmore, Alberta. Population is about 10,000. So you can see them in the left picture, and then on the right, you see what the kitchen boutique did there. This is so important in encouraging us to walk down the street. Now, one thing I've heard from cities and towns before is, oh my gosh, those overhang the sidewalk, and if a sign fell and we own the sidewalk, we could be sued. That's hogwash. You know, the person's business, their insurance covers blade signs. And by the way, this is in Lethbridge, Alberta, where the signs are built to 100-mile-an-hour wind loads. They were just putting these up when I was there, and so you can see how they're blank right now, and they were just putting these the signs actually in there. So if a merchant changed, you don't have to change the whole sign frame, you just change the board that's in the frame. Because signage says a lot about you. Okay, so you didn't think that was so funny. So what about this one? Signage says a lot about you. Notice how they spelled school there? See the guy scratching your head? Okay, now what do we do? You know, when you see this sign for a B&B, does it look like it's probably a nice B&B? And you're probably saying, yeah, it looks really nice. And you know what? You don't even see the B&B. You're making a judgment of the sign. That sign was $330, and it's two-sided. And here's another one, the Inn at White Salmon. This is down near the Columbia River in Washington State. But signage says so much about you. You know, look at this. I saw this on a retail store once. If you need a specific item, please knock. Other than that, we are closed, thank you. So would you walk up and bang on the door? You know, signage says a lot about you. Been there, done that? You know, I was working in one town and they said, oh, we want you to come down memory lane. But what happens when you're going down memory lane? To find out it's a dead end. You know, I was working in Texas once and I went down the road and I saw the Be Happy Ranch, and I went down the road, there was the Happy Go Lucky Ranch. I went, what a great area of Texas. And then I came to the next one. What does your signage say about you? You know, I saw this in Nevada. You know, poor Battle Mountain just can't get any respect. You know, and finally, you know, this is in Ellensburg, Washington. We got Art District, and notice you got signs behind the signs, and then somebody tacked in Longhorn Cattle Company, and then you got go-karts down there, and then you got junk in the grass. I mean, what does signage say about you? Ellensburg is working on these, but they also have one of the top 20 rated rodeos in the United States. Would you guess it from this sign? See the old tires, the beat up guardrail, the weeds, the junk? Signage says so much about you as a merchant, as a business, and as a town. I saw this in Jackson, Wyoming, and about half a block away was this one. By the time I was sorting out all the signs and no parking and 2-hour parking and no oversized vehicles, I was already getting a ticket. But thank goodness I wasn't in New York. How would you like to decipher those? You know, I'll let you read this one. I'll take a moment and let you read that one. Yeah. So would you shop at any store in that town? I'd be going, whoa, I'm out of here. Sometimes signage can be very welcoming and sometimes not. How do you like this one? And then I was working in Door County, Wisconsin when I came up against this sign. I got to tell you a funny story. I was speaking at a conference with about 450 people in the audience, and I showed this sign right here, and a lady jumped up out in the middle of the audience, started waving her hands, so I stopped everything, and I said, yes, ma'am, can I help her? And she yelled out to the top of her lungs, can you tell me how to get there? So, does this look like a nice place to stay? Sure does, doesn't it? You don't even have to see the resort to know that, wow, this looks really nice. It makes a statement about you. And sometimes signage can come down to a personal level. How well received do you think he was when he got home from work and saw his clothes hanging in the tree outside? Brings new meaning to the word branding. You know, the U.S. Sign Council did an interesting study where what they did is they looked at the cost per thousand of reaching customers. You know, radio advertising, about $2.90 per thousand people you reach. You see newspaper advertising, outdoor billboards, and on-site signs. 6 cents for every 1,000 people, or every $1,000 you spend is your return on the number of people who see it. And so here you go, readership comparisons of on-site signs versus direct mail, newspaper, radio advertising. So you can see how important those blade signs are. And by the way, that doesn't mean that's the only way you should market yourself or advertise. So we're not putting those forms of media down, but that's just how important and how great a return on investment your signs can be. And by the way, for you that are merchants, all of your signs should always promote what it is you're selling, the lure to pull us in your door before the name of the store. So what would you guess this is? Thinking seafood restaurant? Crab shack? Well, guess what? They went out of business because they sold kites and windsocks. What would you guess this is? A pub? A jewelry store? You don't know. And you know, it actually is t-shirts and souvenir items. But the point is, always promote what it is that will pull people into your store, not necessarily the name of your store. You know, here's the wood merchant. Can you read the writing underneath the wood merchant there? Probably not. It's script writing. Avoid script writing and never put more than 4 words on a sign. You know, and as a matter of fact, if you have antiques and home accents, just put antiques, home accents. Don't put the name of the store. But by the way, it says quality handmade gifts and furniture. If the sign just said handmade gifts and furniture, we would know more about what they're about than just doing the wood merchant. So, in Jackson, Wyoming, Grizzly Rick's Market was the whole sign. When he added snacks, sundaes, and drinks, the retails went through the roof because it was the lure to pull you into the market. So that's what you need to know. So now, with your blade signs, they should be typically no lower than 7 feet, no higher than 9 feet. That means they can only be 2 feet or 24 inches tall, and typically no wider than 42 inches or 1 meter. And so that's how you should do these signs. That way you keep them fairly consistent in height and size and width. And that's just a general rule of thumb. It might vary depending on your town and how fast people are coming through town, etc. You know, you can even develop a signage and wayfinding plan. You can also address the use of A-boards, sandwich boards, retail signage. You know, and this one in Shasta, California did a nice job where the A-boards are fairly thin and the merchants need to put them away every night. And by the way, if you have blade signs, you have less need for sandwich boards and A-board signs. That's the importance of signage. And by the way, if you do use these sandwich boards or A-boards like this, make them look attractive. Once again, they're meant to pull people in. We've worked in towns where the only A-boards that are allowed are ones for restaurants where they can put today's specials on them. But this is a little seafood restaurant. Isn't that great? It's actually a chainsaw carving. You know, so signs say a lot about you. This is at a gateway. I took this kind of low down, but this is a gateway into Wedgwood Public Golf Course near Conroe, Texas. You know, it doesn't look beautiful. They did the little fake putting green right there. So, looks like a nice golf course. So how much would you pay to play 18 holes at the Jackpot Golf Club in Jackpot, Nevada? See what I mean? You know, and so that's out there near the highway, and I'm going, guess what? This is the clubhouse. It's stunning. The golf course is beautiful. This sign is up at the golf course. So I went to him and I said, why don't you put that sign down by the highway? They said, well, Roger, one of our high school students painted that billboard in the 1970s and his parents still live here. And every year the golf course revenues go down and down and down because signage says a lot about you. What do you think of the Big Pillow Motel? By the way, one bed, $20. What does it say about you? So that's number 15. Number 16 is outdoor dining. Every merchant should do this, and cities need to make sure it's easy for them to get the permits or whatever they need to do for outdoor dining. This is creating third places, places to hang out, places to just have lunch or dinner or whatever. We all want to be. This kind of fits right into that whole plaza idea. You know, so these are samples. That first one was Asheville, North Carolina. This one's in Oxnard, California. Just by creating these trellises and arbors, make it just a beautiful, intimate setting. This is in Anaheim, California. They did a little raised patio area and they put out the umbrellas there. This is in Fredericksburg, Texas, a city of 12,000 people, where they did a little courtyard out in front of historic buildings there. You know, these places are packed. This is Newport on the Levee, once again across from Cincinnati here. And notice they're all kind of different. But this is what people want. We want these kinds of gathering places in season. Even ski resorts do this in the middle of the winter. They'll put out propane heaters and stuff. Once again, this is Newport on the Levee. This is another restaurant just half a block away from the one you just saw. And by the way, you can't let rules and regulations and everything get in the way and kill it. This is in Asheville, North Carolina, where they tell the merchants to please keep the chairs, you know, to the right of that. I worked in one town where they call it the crack rule, and it has nothing to do with low-hanging jeans or drugs. What it is the chairs need to be on one side of the line, but you know what? If a patron moves their chair across that line, they don't sit there and write them infractions. But sometimes we get so litigious and so legal hungry that we kill our downtowns. So this is Asheville. They don't even make you put out these stanchions and dividers and all that. They like it that way. Matter of fact, in Asheville, the restaurants own the corners and they'll create these bulb outs on the corners so that people have these seating areas. That's how important it is to their mix. Here's another one. This is also in Asheville. And so is this. And you may be saying, oh my gosh, there's not handicap access through there. You know what? If somebody's on a wheelchair or on crutches or something, these patrons, you'd be surprised that, oh, excuse me, and they'll move their chair in a little bit. They let it be organic. They do not get so litigious that it kills their downtown. And you know what? They have never had a lawsuit. So, here again. Same restaurant, by the way, just from a different angle. And in this case, you have a restaurant there, and they wanted to create a place for outdoor dining. So the city said, well, gee, if you got a 5-year lease in there, and you're going to be there for a while, they actually lost a couple parking spaces, and they built this little bulb out right here. That's what those are called. And then they put their tables and chairs out there. Isn't that cool? It's just a way to make downtown work. So here you can see a corner spot, and there it is from the air. That's how important outdoor dining is. We want a place to hang out. This is in Salem, Massachusetts. By the way, those flowers are silk. You know, so you can do whatever you wanted with this. It's just ropes. It's inexpensive. Each pot is weighted down, and it creates a central gathering place. Another cool idea I love, this is in Nelson, British Columbia, along Baker Street. They allow restaurants to take up 1 or 2 parking spaces, and they'll put a deck out there during the summer. I took this picture in October. They were just getting ready to take it down for the winter. So while they're taking it down, I said, let me snap a picture quick. But it used to have umbrellas. You can see the propane heater there. They're in the middle of the mountains, the Kootenai Mountains, which are in the western side of the Rockies. And so it's so cool that they're allowing restaurants to do this. Now, before I hear you complaining about, oh my gosh, they're giving up parking spaces, that's a bunch of hooey. You know what? If you have people complaining about parking, well, I can't park right in front of your store, well, that means your store isn't worth half a block walk. And that's what you need to understand, that when towns do this, we're willing to walk a block for it because it creates a central gathering place. And by having the dining there, it also slows traffic down. This is Wolfville, Nova Scotia. So I'm showing you winter places, and they put these out every spring, summer, and fall. In the winter, they take them away for snow removal. So what they do is they allow the restaurant to take up the sidewalk, and they route the pedestrian traffic around them. This is one just down a block from the one you just saw. And these are very cool. You can see where the water drainage still goes down the curb and gutter. You can see the hole there, it runs underneath. And it's got a non-slip surface. And so this is the way to bring down towns to life. And you should encourage your merchants to do this. Here we are in Lodi, California, seeing the same thing. Where they did this. This is more of a permanent, because they're in Northern California and pretty much good weather year round, so they made more of a permanent place for the outdoor dining. Here's in Greenville, South Carolina again. Remember I said they widened the sidewalks and everything, and once again, they don't make them put a bunch of stanchions up there and everything. And people are always looking out for pedestrians. Canmore, Alberta, town of 10,000. Here it is. Here's one of the restaurants right there. Here's another one just right across the street from that one. Put a few tables outside. You know, here's another one that's across the street. These are all in Canmore. And Canmore has become an incredible destination as you go up into the Canadian Rocky Mountains. It's a gorgeous downtown and a gorgeous setting. Here, a little ice cream shop just put out a couple of tables and chairs. How fun is that? So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be restrictive. It can be as simple as what you're seeing here. And let each merchant do their own thing. It shouldn't all have to be cookie cutter. All of these that you're seeing are in the town of Canmore. This is back a block from their main street. They did actually a raised platform there. You know, and it's a winter destination. We worked in Barrie, Ontario, where to try to get a permit would have cost you $15,000 and taking you about a year to do. Within a few months, they cut away all that crap, and now you can go in downtown. They will help you through the process, and within 1 year, they had half a dozen restaurants doing outdoor cafes, and it totally changed their downtown. This is a beautiful one that the British Arms did here. Here you can see how wheelchair traffic or pedestrian traffic would route around. I took this early in the morning before the restaurant opened. That's why you see the chairs leaning up. And they added beautification to each one of these. And in the winter, yes, they put it in storage. It's all modular. That's how cool you can do. Here's one down the road where they had to kind of route around the fire hydrant. And there's enough room for a wheelchair to get through there. And then they've got the raised deck and it goes right around the corner. How cool is that? Outdoor dining should be a priority. And number 17, they invested heavily in retail beautification. You know, this is so important. This is one of my favorite towns in Nova Scotia, Mahone Bay. Isn't that beautiful? By the way, look at all the colors, the yellow, the red, the blue. Make your downtown vibrant. But what I want to show you is the beautification, the effort that they go through to make it pretty. Here's another merchant. And by the way, the shrubs you see down there and the planters on each side of the step are evergreens. And even during the winter, they could put silk plants in the window baskets there. But by creating these kinds of beautiful places, exterior places, just makes us want to be there, and it does increase retail sales. And I'm going to tell you how much in a minute. Here's another shop. All of these are in Mahone Bay. Isn't that great? You know, and this is a little restaurant there. Notice most of their planters are raised so that if they do get some early snow or anything, they're out of the way of snow removal. Just beautiful. And even in the winter, talk about beautification, they changed to an October Scarecrow Festival. And you know what? The place is packed. Here's Prince Charles and Lady Camilla right there in downtown. And so, the other part of beautification is extending window displays to exterior spaces. Every business should have 24 inches or 2 feet outside their window to move a window displays to exterior spaces. This is not outdoor merchandising. So, you never would put a folding table in your window and pile stuff on it, would you? And so you wouldn't do that outside either. So there's no folding tables. You would never take a clothes rack and roll it outside, would you? No, that wouldn't be allowed because you would never take a clothes rack and roll it in your display window, would you? Of course not. So you can see in these examples, they extended window displays to exterior spaces. And yes, it takes 5, 10, 15 minutes to set up each morning, but it will increase your retail sales by doing this. By the way, these examples are in Canmore once again. Not only did they do a good job with the outdoor dining, even the bike rack, even the bike shop down there. You see how they hang the bikes in the front of the store? And notice right here the little table in the foreground that's got flowers on it. They haven't had cases of vandalism and stuff. People want to do this. You know, in Fredericksburg, Texas, that city of 12,000 I was just telling you about, they got together, they bought a whole bunch of these pots, all the merchants. And notice most of the things that are planted there are evergreen, so they don't have to worry about it in the winter. And it does freeze there in the winter. They're in the hill country of central Texas. And so here's another merchant, took 2 of the tall ones and she put evergreens in there. So it looks like that year round. There was a bunch of pots left over, so this merchant did a whole grouping of them. And I took these pictures in early March. They were just getting ready to plant all of these planters. And so, doesn't this make you want to go in? Notice the blade sign. Notice the beautification. That is the power of attracting people into your retail establishments. And here's a huge statistic for you. 70% of first-time sales can come from curb appeal. You know, restaurants, golf courses, wineries, retail shops, lodging facilities, we all travel. Have you ever said these exact words? That looks like a nice place to eat. It looks like a nice place to stay. That looks like a nice shop. Let's go in. We all do that. If we don't know any better, we judge the book by the cover. So once again, 70% of first-time sales can come from curb appeal. Now, once we know who you are, and if we like you, we'll come back in spite of your curb appeal. But that first time, those first impressions start with that. It's the same as home sellers. You know, real estate agents will always tell you, look at the front of your house. That's curb appeal. Did you know that 90% of people that are looking for homes to buy will judge the home when they drive by? If it looks good from the outside, they'll call their realtor and say, you know what, can we come in and we want to see the inside? Curb appeal. You know, this is in Neenah, Wisconsin, a beautiful town. Before, after. Now, here's what we believe. The city should take care of the curbside improvements, whether it's street trees, beautification, but the merchants or your Main Street program should take care of the facade side. But in this case, retail sales skyrocket because of beautification. By the way, even in the winter, those are beautiful. They might put dried bouquets, or they might even put in wreaths, you know, like pieces of cedar and fir in there for the winter months. So it's always beautiful year round. Here's Cambria, California. Doesn't it make you want to go there? You know, this is another one. This is in Newport Beach, California. Just all the way down there. By the way, this is evergreens in the center, and then they're surrounded with annual color. This is also in Newport Beach, California. You know, and in this case, they don't have curbs there. It's just an even curb, so they put those out on the outside right against the building, so it creates kind of a barricade and gives people kind of an intimate setting. And most of the plants you see there are evergreen. And here's a different set of pots. Notice how they put one on each side of the gate. It just makes you want to go there, and it does increase retail sales. So now, let me give you another statistic. Women account for 80% of all retail spending. That's a fact. And I don't mean that to be condescending or anything. It's really, really true. And women want to go places that they feel safe, that they feel welcome. And that's how important beautification is. But the reason I really put up the statistic is because I want you to take a look at the next photo. And what do you see? And by the way, this was not staged. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think benches. Your downtown should be full of benches. And by the way, benches should always be at the facade facing out, and on each side of the bench should be a planter or a potted plant of some kind. You don't put your benches out at the curb facing in or out at the curb facing each other. Benches should always be the facade facing out. And you know what? Even if there's nobody sitting in the benches, it still says welcome without having to use those words. So think benches. Give people a place to rest their feet, to wait, whatever it is. And finally, for beautification, this is in one of my favorite towns, Alpena, Michigan, where even the bike racks are planters, and they have these all over downtown. How cool is that? Number 18, activities and entertainment. Bring downtown to life. Remember what I said about Europe? We're moving to the European standard. We want buskers and entertainers and musicians. Here's a magician here. He makes his money off of tips. He's in Cannon Beach, Oregon, a town of about 3,000 people. You know, and there's a crowd gathered around him as he's trying these things. This is Nelson, British Columbia, another small town in the Rockies. I took this picture in January. They have musicians out there 364 days a year. And they make their money on tips, and it just brings downtown to life. I showed you this one earlier in Greenville, South Carolina. This is just a small little area, not any bigger than the little area I'm standing in right now. This is in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, one thing you notice about this is not amplified music. And so these are the kinds of things you need to do. You know, whether it's, you've got here, whether you've got street performers like that, or music. And you know what to do. Start with Fridays, Saturdays, and maybe Sunday early afternoons. Start with that. You know, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, and I was watching a restaurant. This picture was taken at 4:30 in the afternoon. These restaurants don't even open for dinner at 5. But when they see the music there, they grab chairs and seats, and they're delivered. They're buying drinks, and it's a great way to bring downtown to life. You know, here is that band, all non-amplified music, got a stand-up bass, a violin. There's a guy playing the washboard there off to the right. You can see him. He got the guitar there. Pretty cool, pretty fun. You know, in downtown Asheville, they have this iron. You can see kind of the shape behind the violinist there. And it's just really cool. This is in Berea, Kentucky. Beautiful arts town. And they have a guy playing a hammered dulcimer. That's the instrument. And it says, it's called what? When people walk up to him and he has to explain it, you know what? He gets twice as many tips as other artisans because now they feel obligated. They engaged him in a conversation. You know, this is in Sisters, Oregon. This guy's doing stained glass. He's right outside of a gallery. And by the way, did you know that people are 4 times more likely to buy art when they meet the artist? So he's doing his stained glass work right out there on the table. He's got more of it inside the gallery, but he's right there. It creates activity. It creates entertainment. You can even get portable glass blowing stations. We've seen them in downtowns. It's the coolest thing ever. But art, music, actors, you name it, those are the things that bring downtowns to life. And just like in Florence, Italy, where I took this picture, these are the things we want to make you a central gathering spot. And these things should go into the evening hours. It's a way to get people to come downtown when most of the spending can take place. Number 19, give your downtown district a name. You know, this is the Pearl District in Portland, Oregon. By the way, look at the beautification there. Isn't that stunning? You know, so give downtown a name. Look at some examples. Bricktown in Oklahoma City, Gastown, Vancouver, BC, Pioneer Square in Seattle, the Gaslamp Court in San Diego. I mean, you're seeing a list come up, and big or small. Give your downtown a name. The reason is when we see a sign along the highway or freeway that says downtown this way or central business district this way, you know what? It doesn't mean anything. But if I see a sign that says Pioneer Square next right, it sounds like a destination, not just a geographic designation. Get the difference? A destination versus geographic designation. So it makes it an attraction. You know, in Battle Creek, Michigan, they're working with a competitive sports theme. And we thought, man, they want to do kind of Olympic thing. So we thought, could we call their downtown Celebration Square? You know, all these people that are winning in races and different things. And these are just concepts. Play for keeps is their slogan. And so these would be pole banners in their downtown. You know, the idea was to do a logo like this in Battle Creek and then to really make it celebratory for those people that are in these competitive sports. So downtown could adopt the brand. And finally, number 20. And that is experiential marketing. Sell the feeling, the experience before you sell historic buildings or infrastructure. This is in Allegheny, a small town in western New York. I love this pole banner. It just looks comfortable. It looks a little Victorian. It just makes you want to go there. too often we put on our pole banners pictures of buildings. We're already downtown, we can see the buildings. And so what you need to do is sell the feeling that makes us want to go there and hang out there. So that's what Allegheny did. I showed you this one earlier. What Appleton, Wisconsin did is it's showtime. They have art shows, they have performing arts there. You know, it's a gathering place. It's all part of branding. And how perceptions create a brand are visual cues like those pole banners or your wayfinding signs or beautification. The people and the attitudes. And then finally, word of mouth and social media publicity, what other people are saying about you. And it all starts with curb appeal. So, in closing, I want to give you a case history. This is Asheville, North Carolina. I've showed you pieces of Asheville through this, but I want to put it all together now. Population there is actually bigger than 70,000 now. I think it's probably closer to 80,000. The claim to fame there along the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is stunningly beautiful. The challenge is the parkway is 500 miles long, so how do you set yourself apart? And their brand tagline used to be where altitude affects attitude. Now, does that make you want to go there? Does it sound like it's hard to breathe? And this was their old logo. Does it make you want to go there? And this is the new one. Any way you like it. Now, they have not convinced their police department to put that on the sides of cars, but, and you may say, ooh, I don't like it, but you know what? If it looks a little artsy, a little bit funky, a little bit out of the ordinary, then they nailed it. So, here's the challenge in Asheville. It is home to the incredible Biltmore Estate. It is the finest in fine culture. You could fit 2 Walmart stores in this one house. So how do you brand a downtown with a city that's known for fine culture and a downtown that's known for counterculture? You know, where Bob Dylan, when he did a concert, said, you know what, I'm not doing this tour until I see Asheville on the list. This is a downtown that's so funky and so cool, you can smell incense coming out of the shops. They have some incredible artisans in downtown. I'll tell you, they do amazing tattoo work. So how do you blend where fine culture meets counterculture and bring it all together? Take a look at this.
Excuse me, I've got a question about the chandelier.
Visit exploreasheville.com.
Now that's pretty clever, isn't it? Now, take a look at this one. You know what? Everybody has outdoor recreation. How do you make your outdoor recreation different than everyone else? Take a look at what Asheville did.
Hey, honey.
Visit exploreasheville.com.
Pretty clever, huh? And this is quintessential Asheville, North Carolina. Take a look.
I didn't mean to cause no scene, but I never think about it with dream.
Is that great or what? That is the art of branding. You know, their ads look like this. Isn't that fun? And you know they have an arboretum there. So take a look at this. They sent me a newsletter once, said, Roger, wait till you see what our arboretum is doing to fit into this whole unscripted kind of a brand. So I got the newsletter and I started scrolling down it. And as I was scrolling up, look at what their arboretum is doing. You can rent segways there and do tours through the arboretum. Isn't that amazing? You know, and by the way, this created a small business opportunity for the person who rents the Segway, and the Arboretum gets a piece of that. So it's a revenue source for the business and the Arboretum, and it makes it an incredible experience we'd all want to do. That's what we're talking about when we talk about branding and putting all the pieces together. Even when it comes to Christmas, it's pictures like this, not the normal things. Asheville has become the hippest place to be in North Carolina, unscripted. The result, it is now the #1 destination along the entire 500-mile Blue Ridge Parkway. It is getting national attention as this hip arts community. They have the River Arts District right there. And nightlife is drawing people from at least 100 miles away. And tourism in their county of a couple 100,000 people is $1.7 billion a year. Frommer's named it one of the 12 global must-see destinations. And in 2011, Fodor said the 21 places we're going in 2011, and Asheville was at the top of the list. And look at the competition to the right coming up on your screen. That's the power of putting all these pieces together. And by the way, look at that picture of right downtown with the outdoor dining at night. And that is the power of putting all these pieces together. Here's another cool thing is this hip arts community. See these? These are almost like bus shelter stands, but notice the wood platforms you see right there? Merchants or artisans can pick those up at the end of the day, put them in their car, take them home, and the next morning at 10 o'clock, they bring them out, and they just put those in place, and you have artisans. You can see one down the street. Their whole downtown, if it's not full of artisans and musicians, it even has vendors. They turned their whole downtown into a thriving public market. They took an old Woolworth store, instead of making it into an antique mall, it has all these artisans, and the artisans have to live within the area. This is a fabulous gallery here, and it even goes down into a lower level there. And the art and everything there is amazing. And there's buskers, entertainers all over downtown. You can walk downtown almost any time of any day, and you'll find 5 or 10 different musicians out on every corner. You know, young people love being there, the creative class, people like this, which I showed you earlier. You know, here's that iron from a distance, you know, and I don't know about drums. I think that's almost as good as amplified music. But here's another group of young people that were just getting ready to set up. You can see the iron right there in the backdrop. They even did things like putting chess tables right in the middle of downtown, you know, so that people stop there. It's just a fabulous gathering place. And even my wife Jane got caught up into it in front of the Civic Center. Isn't that cool? And so they have a public market there called Grove Market. Here it is inside. Notice it even has blade signs inside. And they are known as a foodie destination. Livability.com named Asheville as one of the best places to live in the entire United States. And when you go there, they even do itineraries that are calorie burn itineraries. Lift to whisk, not weights. And you could burn 510 calories doing it. Talk about unscripted. Talk about living up to the brand. And then notice the colors in this logo again. Notice how they incorporated those into their wayfinding signage. This is pedestrian wayfinding, letting you know where things are in their downtown. This is vehicular wayfinding. Remember, they're an arts destination. Notice the finial at the top of the sign. This little finial is different on every sign. So they had artisans create all these things, and it just really brings to life the whole arts brand. Here's another one there that looks like a flame. It's made out of glass. You know, here's another one that looks like a little feather at the top. And by the way, on the back of the signs, they put famous quotes. They let you know this is where they filmed the movie Cold Mountain. Here's another type of pedestrian wayfinding in another part of the downtown. You know, these are the things that it all comes together and makes you an outstanding downtown. And Asheville has become one of the destinations of choice in the entire North America. It's that fabulous. You can do Segway tours right through downtown. They now do trolley tours all over Asheville. That's how important this whole thing is when you get it to all come together. So, at the end of the day, a good retail signage program. Outdoor dining is needed. Retail beautification and seating areas. Activities and entertainment. Names for your downtown districts or the entire downtown. You don't have to have a bunch of districts, even just one district in your downtown. Experiential marketing. And these things are driven by your merchants. Yes, your property dealers need to be partners. The city needs to be a partner. Throughout this whole 20, you need to have partners, but you should drive this effort and push it forward. So in closing, remember that history isn't a point in time. Today is the first day you can start creating history for the future for your downtown. Just like this merchant does. This always cracks me up. I don't know how that works. Or take a look at this. Have some fun, engage the customers, create outstanding experiences. Can you guess what town this is in? Yes, you got it, Salem, Massachusetts. And finally, you know, work to keep visitors in town longer. I saw this along the Oregon coast once. It cracked me up. Evacuation route is not a through street. And then finally, if you need to, turn to religion for answers like this church did. And so, at the end of the day, you are making a promise, and you need to make sure that you deliver on that promise, because nobody wants to come into your downtown after 6 o'clock and this is what they see. And so, downtowns are back. Make yours just awesome. We want downtowns more than ever before. But you know, because downtowns cannot get their acts together, they cannot get their property owners working together and their merchants working together, developers are building new downtowns called lifestyle retail centers. Don't let that happen. I have nothing against downtown or lifestyle retail centers, but we want downtowns that are organic to you. It will increase your tourism spending. It will increase your local spending. So make yours just great. And thank you so much for watching the 20 ingredients of an outstanding downtown.